Hey guys, this is Heroic Flamingo and welcome to my Guild Wars 2 class guide for the Spellbreaker. In this video I'm going to be looking at the Spellbreaker's exclusive weapons and each individual weapon skill. I will then be looking at the healing, utility and elite skills that the Spellbreaker can use. I'll also be looking at the unique profession mechanics for the Spellbreaker to see how it overhauls the base warrior, and then I'm going to be looking at the traits within the elite specialization to see how you can make yourself even more powerful. So if you're interested in playing as a Spellbreaker, or if you already are and you want to know more, strap in and we'll get started right now. Okay, so before we go into the detail, I just want to give you a quick profession overview for the Spellbreaker. So the Spellbreaker is the second elite specialization for the warrior, and is unlocked in the Path of Fire expansion. The broken weapons of the Sunspears have become daggers in the hands of their descendants, which they use to strike at the very fabric of magic and strip it from their foes. They meditate to see past their enemies' defences and use their adrenaline to counterattack. So this isn't a massive change to the base warrior. It adds a counterattacking skill, which is a part of your adrenaline bar. So we'll be going into that a little bit later in the video. It does give you a couple of new weapons to use, 2 daggers, so a main hand dagger and an offhand dagger, so 5 new weapon skills to look at. And it does give you a new type of skill called meditation skill, so we'll be going into that a little bit later as well. So the first thing I want to go through with you guys is the weapon skills. Okay, so the first thing I want to look at is the new and exclusive weapons for the Spellbreaker. So unusually the Spellbreaker actually has 2 exclusive weapons with it. Unfortunately they are the same weapon, so you've got the main hand dagger and the offhand dagger, but it still gives us 5 new weapon skills to play with. So I've equipped both of these now. So obviously the main hand dagger is my first 3 abilities, and my offhand dagger is my 4th and 5th ability. So do bear in mind that these don't have to be wielded together. You can mix it up with a different offhand and a different main hand to go with it, but I just thought it'd be easier for this video to just do it together. Okay, so your number 1 ability is a chain skill, which means it has to be done in a sequence, and normally a lot of the damage and the conditions or the buffs are weighted towards the final strike. So try not to interrupt it midway through and let it play out. So you've got Precise Cut, Focus Slash and Keen Strike. So the first one is Strike Your Foe. This attack deals increased critical damage. So it's going to be melee range up to 2 targets, a little bit of damage and critical damage increase 15%. The second one is Strike Your Foe again, and it has exactly the same effect, critical damage increase 2 targets. The third one is Strike Your Foe and Gain Might. Gain additional might on critical hit. So the third one's going to be a bigger hit, it's going to do more damage, and it's going to put might on you, so it's going to be a buff, so you do more damage for the next 5.25 seconds. And you also get another might buff on top of that if you get a critical hit on that third strike as well. So let's try out on this guy here. Okay, so first strike, second strike, third strike. First, second, third, and as you can see the third strike does over double damage to the other one, so you're definitely going to want to let it play out and do that third strike. So that's your number 1 ability on the main hand dagger. So your number 2 is Aura Slicer, and this has an 8-second cooldown. So leap and strike your foe, inflicting slow. So this is going to be 300 range, so not too far away, but probably from about this far away we'll be able to do it. So you're going to leap at the enemy, you're going to strike them with your dagger, and you're going to inflict slow on them, which means their skills and actions will be slower for 1.5 seconds. So let's try this out on this guy. So if I go from here, if I press number 2, boom, there you go, you jump towards him, and then you put slow on him, and it does a decent amount of damage as well. So your number 3 is Disrupting Stab, and this has a 12-second cooldown. So daze is your target. If your target is using a skill, the daze duration is extended. So it's going to do a little bit of damage. It's going to daze for 1/4 second, or it's going to daze for 1 second if they're using a skill, and it's from melee range. So you're going to want to use this when the enemy's using a skill, so you can interrupt and daze them for a second. Otherwise, it's not really that effective. So let's try this out. So if I press that, well, just a quick one there. Quick little daze. I mean, if they're not using a skill, you can barely even see it. So you're really going to want to use that when they are using a skill to get the full effect. Right, so your 4th skill, which is actually your first skill on your offhand dagger, is Wastrel's Ruin, and this is a 15-second cooldown. So strike your target, deals more damage to foes not using skills. Okay, interesting. This is a complete reverse to the last one. So it's going to hit your enemy from melee range, you're going to do a bit of damage, and if the foe is not using a skill, damage increases 100%. So, I mean, not sure how you're going to time this, but you've got to make sure your enemy is not using a skill, and then you're going to do double the damage. So do bear that in mind. So it might be a little bit confusing if you're using these both, because you've got to do that one when they are using skills and that one when they're not using skills. But let's just see what this looks like. So boom, quick little strike there. So a decent amount of damage, but it's going to do double that if they're not using a skill, which obviously it did there because they're not using a skill. But so just make sure you bear that in mind. Okay, the fifth and final ability, or the second ability on the offhand dagger, is Blade Storm. This has a 20-second cooldown. So unleash a flurry of attacks that damages foes and reflects projectiles coming from the front. So we're going to, it's 300 range, so relatively close. It's going to reflect missiles. It's going to strike 7 times. It's going to gain swiftness to yourself, and it's going to put vulnerability on the enemy. So there's a few different things there. So let's try this out and see what this does. So if I use my number 5 on this guy. Alright, nice. You see loads of stacks of vulnerability there. Really cool effect as well. It sort of shoots them out. So I can do it from a bit further away. So I can do it from like back here. You don't have to be standing right next to them. So that's a really cool ability there. Does a decent amount of damage. Stacks of vulnerability on the enemy, which is always good for you and your group mates. So I think that's a pretty good skill there. So that's both of the new weapons, the 2 daggers for the Spellbreaker. The next thing I want to look at is the new and exclusive healing skill. Alright, so now I want to have a look at the new and exclusive healing skill for the Spellbreaker. So this is our first look at one of the new meditation skills. This is called Natural Healing. It has a 25-second cooldown. So lose boons and conditions, then heal yourself. So it's a big heal, this one. So, you know, based on this one's health, it's 8,500, but that's a lot more than usual. So that's a big heal, but you're going to remove conditions from yourself, which is good. But then do bear in mind, you're also going to remove boons from yourself. So any positive effects on yourself are going to be removed, as well as the negative effects. So it's a bit of both there. But obviously, if you haven't got any boons on you, then you know it's going to be great. And obviously, if you're going to be using your healing skills, probably because you're in a bit of peril and you've probably got conditions on yourself, so you are going to clear those. But just bear in mind, you get rid of those boons as well. Let's see what this looks like. Cool. There you go, and obviously it's got a 25-second cooldown, which is pretty good for a healing skill, especially one that has that much healing. So, as you know, if you're not putting loads and loads of boons on yourself, then to be honest, it's a really good healing skill because it's got a big heal, not too long cooldown, removes conditions as well. You just got that little negative there of removing the boons. So that is the new healing skill. So the next thing I want to do is have a look at the new utility skills. Okay, so the next thing I want to have a look at are the new utility skills for the Spellbreaker. So if we go here, we can see we've got 4 new skills along here, and these are our meditation skills. So I'm going to equip the first 3 here, and then we'll look at the 4th one straight afterwards. So our first one is Featherfoot Grace, and this has a 45-second cooldown. So gain a burst of super speed and resistance. So this is going to break stun. So when you use it, you're going to break out of any stun, and you're going to give super speed for 5 seconds. So movement speed is greatly increased, and resistance for 5¼ seconds, which is conditions currently on you are ineffective. So let's have a look. So this is going to, boom, there you go. So I can move around really quickly. Any conditions I have are ineffective, and it's going to break out of stun as well. So that's a pretty cool one to have on your bar. So the next utility skill here is Sight Beyond Sight. So this is a ammo skill, and it has 2 counts, and the count recharges 20 seconds. So this is reveal nearby foes and make your next attack a critical hit. Remove blindness. So it's going to remove blindness from yourself. It's going to reveal enemies. So if they're stealthing, it's going to reveal them and they can't stealth again for 5 seconds. And it's going to mean your next attack is a critical hit. So if you've got enemies that are hiding from you, it's going to be pretty good because it's going to reveal them. If they've blinded you, it's going to get rid of that. And then you're going to be able to get a nice critical hit in as well. So let's try this out. So, boom, there you go. And your next attack's a critical, as you can see there. Nice critical hit. I can use that again. Critical hit. Boom, there you go. Nice. And obviously you've got the other effects as well, which we can't really see, but that's going to be pretty cool. So our third utility skill is Imminent Threat. This has a 35-second cooldown. So taunts nearby foes. gaining adrenaline for each affected foe. So taunt, so involuntarily attack you. So basically you're going to taunt nearby enemies, up to 5 enemies to attack you in a radius of 240 around you, and you're going to gain adrenaline for each foe. So the more foes that you get to attack you, you're going to bump your adrenaline up. So that's pretty cool. And as you can see, you get retaliation, which means reflect incoming damage back to its source as well. So that's pretty cool. So let's have a look. So if I try this out, you're going to taunt these foes. You see, obviously they're not actually going to attack me because they're golems, but you're going to get retaliation. So you're going to be reflecting damage back to the source. Up to 5 enemies around you are going to attack you, and you're going to gain adrenaline as well. So quite a few cool things there. That's pretty cool if you're sort of like a tanky character and you want the enemies to attack you, you know, in a group situation or something, then that would be a good option. Okay, so we've swapped to our 4th and final utility skill here, which is Break Enchantments, and it's got a 25-second cooldown. So strike foes around you and remove their boons. Deal more damage to foes that lose a boon. So you're going to damage enemies in a radius of 360 around you, hitting up to 5 targets. You're going to remove up to 4 boons, and you're going to deal more damage to foes that lose a boon. So if you are removing boons from those enemies, then you're going to be doing a bit more damage as well, and that damage increase is 100%. Also, it is unblockable. Okay, so let's try this out. Boom, there you go. As you can see, nice radius around you there. All those people is going to hit them, and it's going to take away their boon. So if you've got a lot of enemies around you and they're all buffing themselves, that's obviously going to take those away and do even more damage if you do. So it's obviously only really worth using if the enemies around you are putting boons on themselves, because you're going to be able to get rid of those and do more damage as a result. Okay, so that is all of the new utility skills. So the next thing I want to have a look at is the new and exclusive elite skill for the Spellbreaker. Okay, so the next thing I want to have a look at is the exclusive elite skill for the Spellbreaker. So this is an elite meditation skill with a 90-second cooldown, and it's called Winds of Disenchantment. Create an area of calm where foes cannot receive boons and lose boons every interval. Enemy missiles entering this area are blocked. So there's quite a few things there. So it creates a radius around you of 360. It does a little bit of damage. It stops incoming boons. So basically all up to 5 enemies in the area can't receive any new boons, and they also lose boons every interval, which is every 1 second. So in total it lasts for 5 seconds, and every 1 second they'll lose boons. They can't get any new boons. And also enemy missiles that enter the area are blocked as well. So there's quite a few different things going on there. So let's just have a look at what this actually looks like then, shall we? So if I stick this down here, alright, that's really cool. As you can see, it's damaging every interval, so every 1 second for 5 seconds. Yeah, so enemy missiles, it would have blocked enemy missiles, and it would be ripping boons off them every 1 second, and it wouldn't be able to put any new boons on. So it's a pretty good way of sort of suppressing the enemies to make sure they can't buff themselves up or anything like that. And had a really cool animation to go with it as well, to be honest. So I do like that. So that would be probably pretty good in a group situation, say like in a dungeon fighting like a big mob or something like that. You could place that down, and the ranged mobs wouldn't be able to hit you with their missiles, and then you'd be ripping the boons off all of the ones around you. So that's a pretty cool elite skill there to add to your collection. So that's the elite skill done. So the next thing I want to talk about are the unique profession mechanics for the Spellbreaker. Alright, so now I want to talk about the unique profession mechanics for the Spellbreaker. So to be honest, there's not loads to cover in this section. It doesn't massively overhaul the base warrior, but it does do a couple of cool things. So obviously we've already addressed the new weapons, so the dual daggers that you can now have, which adds quite a cool new feel to the melee combat of the warrior. And then we've been through all of these new meditation skills that you have access to as well. So the main thing that it does is it does change your adrenaline bar and give you a new counter-attacking skill here. So obviously on the base warrior you have 3 separate adrenaline bars, so 30 in total, 10 in each. Whereas with the Spellbreaker it's actually two bars of 10 here, so total adrenaline bar of 20, so it's not quite as much. And you have the F1 ability is actually the same as the one on each weapon on the base warrior. So that means that with the new addition of the main hand dagger, we do have a new burst skill to look at. So all the other weapons have the same burst skill basically, so I'm not going to go into them in this video. Do check out my base warrior video if you want to see that. So I'll show you the new burst skill that we've got on the new weapon, and then I'll also have a look at this full counter ability, which is the new burst ability, which regardless of whatever weapon you're using, this will be on there as your F2. So the first thing I'll do is I'll have a look at that. So it's got a 12-second cooldown, and it requires 1 bar of this adrenaline, so you only need to fill up 10 of it, and it only costs 10. So even if you have 20, it'll only cost 10 and you still have a bar remaining. So it's absorb the next attack against you and counterattack all foes around you. Foes struck by the counterattack are interrupted. So this is pretty cool. So this can be used every 12 seconds and with 1 bar of adrenaline. So it's going to damage enemies around you. Basically absorb the next attack. So you want to use it when you're about to receive an attack. It's going to counterattack against all foes around you. So a range of 300 around you, up to 5 enemies. And foes that are struck by it as well are interrupted and dazed for 2 seconds. You also evade for half a second while you're using it, and you gain stability as well. So there's quite a few cool things there that you can do as part of it. So I'll have a look at that in a second. And the other one, so this is our weapon burst skill. So this is because we've got the dagger equipped. Our F1 ability is Breaching Strike, which has an 8-second cooldown, and it's strike your target and remove boons. So this is going to hit the enemy. It can do it from it's a leap ability, so it doesn't have to be right. You don't have to be right up close. You can do it from a sort of mid-range, and it will leap towards them. You're going to rip up to 3 boons off the enemy and do a decent amount of damage as well. And you can use that every 8 seconds, and that too only costs 1 of these bars of adrenaline. So if you have full adrenaline, so 20, you can use both of them, and then that will utilise your full bar. So the 12-second cooldown on that, 8-second cooldown on that. So you want to sort of use both of them. I mean, with this, especially if you're using the daggers, you're attacking really quickly, so you're building up your adrenaline quite fast, so you can actually use these quite frequently. And obviously I'll demonstrate at the end in the combat demonstration. But what I'll do now is I'll get a full bar of adrenaline, and I'll just show off these 2 new skills to you. Okay, so I've now got full adrenaline, which is 20, and I want to demonstrate these 2 abilities. So as I said, they both cost 10, so I can use both of them with this full bar. So first let's use Breaching Strike. So this is that leap ability which is specific to the dagger. So bear in mind this F1 ability will be different for each of the weapons that you use. It will be the same as your burst skill on the base warrior. So if I use that, boom, there you go. So it leaps towards them, doing a decent attack there, and it will also be ripping up to 3 boons off the enemy as well. It's also unblockable, so it's a pretty good strike there, and you can use that quite frequently with only an 8-second cooldown and only 1 bar of adrenaline. So our other one, our F2 ability, which regardless of whatever weapon we use, this will be on our bar, is full counter, and as we said, that's going to absorb the next attack. So we can't properly show this because we're not being attacked by the golems, but it's going to absorb the attack and counter attack against all foes around you, and foes struck by the counter attack are going to be interrupted, dazed, all of that stuff that we went through. So let's just see what this looks like. Alright, so nice cool animation there. So you're going to put that force field around you, and obviously you want to do it when you've got an incoming attack within the next couple of seconds. So you do that, the attack comes in, you counter attack against all enemies around you, not just the one that attacked you, all enemies around you, up to 5 enemies on decent range there as well. And it's going to counter attack and interrupt them. So that's a pretty strong ability there that you're going to want to try out and see how that fits into your build, because that's going to be sitting there on your bar, like I said. As long as you're a Spellbreaker, that's going to be your F2 ability. So that's a pretty cool one. Okay, so that's pretty much everything for the unique profession mechanics for the Spellbreaker. So next thing I want to do is I want to have a look at the individual traits. Okay, so now I want to have a look at the individual traits for the Spellbreaker. So I've equipped the Spellbreaker as my 3rd specialization here, as it's an elite specialization. And just by having it on our bar here, we've got the dagger proficiency, which means that you can wield daggers in both hands. And obviously we've already been through that. Also, your first passive, a couple of things we've been through. So Spellbreaker's Conviction. So maximum adrenaline is capped at 2 bars, and only level 1 bursts are available. Gain access to the full counter burst and meditation skills. So those are all the things that we've been through in the video so far. So your first choice on trait here is Pure Strike, which is deal increased critical hit damage. This bonus is doubled against boonless foes. So your critical hit damage is increased by 7% and it's increased by 14% if you're attacking a foe that doesn't have any boons on it. So the next is Guard Counter. So gain protection after a successful full counter. So that's your F2 ability. Once you successfully use that, you'll gain protection for 3 seconds, which will be minus 33% incoming damage. Next is No Escape. So dazes and stuns inflict immobilize. So a lot of the abilities we've looked at on the Spellbreaker have done dazes and stuff like that. So any dazes and stuns inflict immobilize on the enemy as well, which means they're completely unable to move. So that just buffs that. Your next passive is Dispelling Force. So dazes, stuns, pulls, knockdowns, knockbacks and launches remove boons. So any of those things that you use, which are quite a lot part of the Spellbreaker, will be removing boons from the enemy as well. Loss Aversion. So removing boons from a foe deals damage and gives you adrenaline. So as you saw, a lot of these things are about removing boons. So whenever you do that, you deal damage and you gain adrenaline. So that's pretty cool. So that's going to help you get your adrenaline bar up a lot quicker and be able to use those F1 and F2 abilities, as well as a little bit of extra damage as well. So Slow Counter. So full counter applies cripple and slow. So cripple minus 50% movement speed and slow skills and actions are slower. So whenever you use your F2 ability, you're going to be applying cripple and slow. Next you've got Sun and Moon Style. So gain bonuses for each dagger you equip. Main hand means that your interrupts grant quickness. And offhand means you heal for a percent of your outgoing critical damage. So that's pretty cool. So if you have both of them equipped, you're going to be gaining quickness whenever you interrupt, and you're going to be getting 7% extra critical damage. Sorry, 7% of your critical damage converted to healing. So, you know, if you've got the daggers as weapons as part of your build, you're probably going to want to looking at taking that trait. So the final passive here is Attacker's Insight. So gain insight when disabling foes or removing boons. Full counter refreshes all burst skills on hit. So whenever you're disabling foes or removing boons, you're going to gain insight, and that gives you an extra 45 ferocity and 45 power for 15 seconds, stacks up to 5 times, and full counter also refreshes all burst skills on hit. So that's cool. So whenever you use your F2, you're going to refresh your F1. So that's pretty awesome there. So that means you'll be able to use your F1 even more. So next up is Enchantment Collapse. So removing a boon from a foe causes all nearby foes to lose additional boons. So that's cool. So if you're removing boons from your foes, which you are quite a lot, you're going to be removing additional ones from nearby enemies as well. A radius of 240 up to 5 targets. Revenge Counter. So full counter deals additional damage and grants resistance. Copy conditions on yourself to targets you hit with full counter. So this is going to make your full counter, your F2 ability, even more powerful there. So you're going to be doing more damage with it. You're going to get resistance when you use it, and you're going to be sticking your conditions on anyone you hit with it as well. So that's awesome. Finally, you've got Magebane Tether. So hitting with a burst skill, cast Magebane Tether on your target if they are within range. So a burst skill, so your F1, so whenever you hit with your F1 ability, you're going to cast this, which is tether yourself to your target. If they move beyond the range threshold, pull them to you. Grants might and reveals your target every second. So you're going to tie yourself to your target, and whenever they move beyond the range threshold, you're going to pull them to you. So it keeps them close to you. The range threshold is 600, so whenever they try to go outside of that, you're going to pull them towards you, so they can't go too far away and sort of use ranged attacks on you. Especially good then if you're using melee, which obviously you mostly will be as a warrior. So that's a pretty awesome one. So that's all of the traits for the Spellbreaker. So the next thing I want to do is I want to throw together a quick Spellbreaker build and do a combat demonstration for you guys. Alright, so I've thrown together a quick Spellbreaker build. I've got, of course, the dual daggers here, and with my other weapon I've got the greatsword. I've got a good selection of meditation skills along here, as they're exclusive to the Spellbreaker, so I can try those out, and then I'll be using these F abilities as well when I build up some adrenaline. So let's give this a go and see how it goes.
Endurance drain.
Okay, so that shows off all of the Spellbreaker abilities there, just so you can have a look. So I think that pretty much covers everything for the Spellbreaker. If you have any more questions about it, then leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. If you want to watch a video on any of the other classes or elite specializations, then check out the playlist on my channel, as I've nearly done all of them now. And if you want to watch a video that summarizes all of the classes and elite specializations in one shorter video, then check that out, because I've got that too. So thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe to be kept up to date, and I will see you later.